What the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
Congratulations to Canada. I'm sorry we got the tariffs on you.
Heck of a hockey game.
It was a great hockey game.
Heck of a hockey game.
So
you think they were playing harder?
They're playing harder because of the tariff, but they didn't want to be the 51st state.
That's the motivation.
That's motivation.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Nice to see you're taking this seriously. That is Charles Barkley, former NBA star, with a couple of others, I guess. Analysis of last night's Team Canada win over the U.S. James Mennie's on the line. He's over at the Montreal Gazette. Jim, that's, kind of being silly. But today, the Prime Minister, by the way, last night, I guess, let everybody know, way to go, Canada.
Well, absolutely, but I got to tell you, Charles Barkley's got it figured out. He's got Donald Trump figured out. He's got the whole idea. Taking the idea that Donald Trump is sitting on his toilet at 3 o'clock in the morning saying that Canada will be the 51st state is absolutely ludicrous. And as cloying and breathless as Justin Trudeau was saying, you can't take our country and you can't take our game. Well, listen, I said yesterday it's a hockey game. No matter what happens, we just remember it's just a hockey game. We could just as easily have lost. And quite frankly, Aaron, we're not talking about, the pillars of Canadian tradition here when we're talking about the Four Nations final. I seem to recall hearing lots of our listeners calling in the Montreal Now news quiz. One of the questions was, what are the two other countries, apart from Canada and the U.S., in the Four Nations final? And it was like, Bosnia, Italy. Not everyone knows about this. This is not part of hockey's DNA. And God help us, how many people out there are confused today when they hear, oh, man, that game, that overtime goal by Connor McDavid, man, that was like a real Cinderella ending. And they're going, what's an MMA fighter doing with Team Canada? And no, that's Conor McGregor. Conor McDavid is with the Edmonton Oilers, but this is where we are. People are having this dropped over them as if it's some litmus test for our patriotism, as if it's some stress test for whether Canada is going to exist or not. For God's sakes, it was a hockey game. Donald Trump is shutting up about it for now. So I'm sure he'll find something else to get under people's skin. But the fact is, and what I really found fascinating is, here we are like 8 minutes before you're talking to me, you're doing the business report, and it's already starting to creep back on Donald Trump that these tariffs, none of which have been executed thus far, are already beginning to get Americans nervous. And quite frankly, Donald Trump, that's the biggest weakness Donald Trump has, is the United States of America, or as they're referred to more recently, the United States of Karen. Because, frankly, the Americans voted for Donald Trump. That is a fact. The election was not stolen. And the other fact is, when it comes to Americans, by and large, are utterly ignorant about the world around them, and their ignorance is only surpassed by their indifference. So everyone, please, take a deep breath. Understand that Donald Trump can shoot his mouth off all he wants, but until something happens, keep your powder dry, and for God's sakes, don't bet the farm on the outcome of a hockey game.
Well, Jim, I'm going to tell you, I like the idea, and you're right, not everyone got involved in this. This is really the first year they've done this. I think maybe this does become something a bit bigger going forward in the NHL, but I will mention it's given us some great editorial cartoons, Aislin's among them. So yeah. I'm thrilled with that. You know what? Let's make it something, because it's something for Canada to stand behind, if you will, and take pride in it. And I'm perfectly okay with that.
Well, I'm happy. I'm happy the game ended well for Canada. But the fact is, Donald Trump is still there. The issues are still there.
Sure.
And if he turns around and says something else and people start freaking out, I know people who ordinarily, they're living normal lives, but they're freaking out. Some of them are genuinely worried that this clown is somehow going to point the military in Canada and invade. That's where we are. Even though right now, as I say, he has he's signed all kinds of these. They look like the bill in fancy restaurants. All of these executive orders. But the fact is, honestly, Aaron, he's done absolutely nothing. And in fact, yesterday, we were so caught up with what was going on in Quebec City, we forgot this clown has been in office for all of 30 days. So everyone, like I say, take a deep breath. The guy's not going anywhere, at least not now. and understand that Donald Trump's biggest enemy in the end is the country that elected him, and of course his own yap. And believe me, that is going to come down the pike sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and not just his own yap, Jim, but also his press. Did you hear this? Check this out.
Yeah. We look forward to the United States beating our soon-to-be 51st state, Canada.
How dare you? Anyway, that's Catherine Levitt, who obviously is the president's mouthpiece in every sense of the word.
Aaron, we're talking about hockey, but you know what? You know what else? The one thing that Donald Trump does have experience in, okay, is because I don't think he ever was a billionaire, and he's a failure as a businessman. But man, he milked that whole professional wrestling circuit, right? The WWF. And that's exactly the kind of drama that we're seeing here. It's all smoke and bloody mirrors. Yeah. And please, people, don't get worked up about it. The guy is just a loudmouth clown. And in the end, we'll see what's going to happen. But you can only do this for so long. You can only mouth off for so long. And sooner or later, you have to ante up. And if there's one thing Donald Trump has shown he is utterly unable to do, is to back up any of his hot air with anything in terms of action or achievement.
Well, I will point out one thing. The thing I know he does notice, and I think we've talked about that, he certainly did the first time around, is the stock market. And today, to your point, Jim, the Dow was down 750 points. That's a big move. And what's that about? It's about tariffs and uncertainty. So maybe that's what starts to get through.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, because if anyone turned around and says, well, it's because they lost the hockey game, I was going to hit him with a flounder, but honest to God, this is it. Folks, there are real issues here, and there is uncertainty, and he's causing it, okay? But let's just remember that this guy, quite frankly, has been a fraud from day one. He's been, and the fact is, the American people are so easily conned because basically, politically, they're among the laziest people on earth. So you know what? That's where we are. But man, oh man, like I say, pace yourselves, ladies and gentlemen. This is only just beginning. But the good news is, in the end, the guy is all hot air.
Now, I'll move on, but just tell me, since we're still talking about the hockey game, what did you think of the anthem, the situation with Chantal Kreviazuk?
Maybe she meant well, but like what they say about the road to hell, right? It's paved with good intentions, and honestly, I don't think that was a very good idea. Either make a comment before, talk to the press, but for God's sakes, and the government has been as guilty of this as anyone else. Stop mucking around with the national anthem. We've already had the debate over whether it should even be sung at the beginning of sporting events. Yeah. But stop editing the national anthem. You're just making yourself look silly.
All right, let's move on from that and talk about what else you want to talk about here.
I want to talk about Frank Bayless, the only billionaire in the Liberal leadership race.
Well, hold on. Is Mark Carney not a billionaire?
I don't believe so. And even if he was, he would never admit it. You can't. I don't think that they would leave a very good taste if you were, head of the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, and you wind up being a billionaire. I don't think people would expect that. Okay. But here's Frank Bayless, okay? And we know how he made his money. He built up this medical supply company with his family. He sold it for $1.5 billion, whatever, U.S., which is like 27 trillion Canadian. And now he came out just in time for the debate, Aaron. He turns around and says, what you got to do with Donald Trump is just ignore him. I've dealt with guys like this all my life. He sold his company to Americans. He knows what he's talking about. And he's saying, if you turn around and start giving him oxygen, so to speak, this is never going to stop. And I have to tell you, Frank Bayless will probably not end up being leader of the federal Liberal Party for no other reason than the fact that mainstream media and a lot of observers, and I guess the so-called political establishment, has decided that job is going to go to Mark Carney. But for God's sakes, I hope he stays in government. This is a guy we really, 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 really need running things right now in Ottawa, especially at this point in time, at this point in this nation's history. And I really hope, no matter what happens, whether he wins, Tom, but even if he doesn't, I really hope he hangs around. This is the kind of guy I think this country needs at this point in time.
It's funny you bring that up, because when we had him in studio on the show, going back to when he announced he was going to be running, right? And one of the questions is always, and remember, he is a former MP, right? He served for 4 years and decided that's not for me, and now he's running for leadership of the party. This idea that if he's not going to win, and chances are, as you just said, Jim, he's not going to win, why would you stick around for 4 years in a party that you want to lead and didn't get that job just to stick around and be a backbencher?
Well,
What difference does that make?
I don't want to sound too cynical, but maybe there's still people out there who have a sense of duty. Maybe there are people out there who have a sense of purpose and realize that sometimes it's not about the money. And certainly in his case, it's not about the money. But sometimes if you can help your country, if you have the talent to help your country, and if you want to trade those 4 years of your life in exchange for making your country a better place, I don't have a problem with that at all. I understand what you're saying. I understand the rationale and the pragmatism of it, okay? But let's face it, whether you are the Minister of Finance or the Minister of Industrial Relations or whatever, okay, that expertise, the expertise Frank Bayless possesses, cannot be simulated elsewhere. He has it. He didn't have to do this, and he came back anyway. I really think, as I say, given the present context, we need people like Frank Bayless in government. And like I said, I just hope he sticks around because he has run a very grassroots campaign thus far. His timing is good coming out with this whole assessment of Trump and how Trudeau handled Trump just in time for the debates. Like I say, I'm not entirely sure that he's a shoo-in or even a long shot at this point for the leadership. But man, oh man, I think this is the kind of guy this country needs right now.
Last question. I'm away next week. How much change do you think will come in this race based on the two debates that are going to happen?
Not much. We've had this conversation before, Aaron. Political debates, leadership debates, I think were created in this country more for the media than anybody else. I don't think people come around and I don't think card-carrying liberal members are going to watch that debate and make up their minds. I think if you got signed up by one of the candidates, that's the person you're going to vote for. Yeah. And the only other thing that will affect you, as I said, is the absolute tsunami of presumptive support from Mark Carney from virtually every quarter, from every pundit, from every mainstream media platform. And maybe the debates will change that, but I doubt it. Everyone's been looking for that knockout punch ever since the debate between John Turner and Brian Mulroney. We're still waiting for it. It's like Moby Dick. We know it's out there somewhere. Maybe we'll find it again. But for the time being, I'm not expecting any bombshells between those, for those 2 days.
And no Hail Marys. I mean, take Chrystia Freeland. If you're going to have a Hail Mary here because you're trailing so much, what's your Hail Mary here? What are you going to
honestly, Aaron, I liked your idea, which sounds like the ending of a rom-com, to tell you the truth, where at the end of the debate, she sort of stands up and says, you know what, for the good of the country, I'm going to support Mark Carney, my good friend and the godfather of my kids. And then they walk towards each other and they hug, and that's the end.
Okay. Well, we'll see if that happens. James Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Jim, thank you.
Enjoy your vacation,
Thank you.